and he is calling from Australia. Something kind of unique, Steve, that I wanted to say to you is that tomorrow in Canada is my 20th wedding anniversary. So I am waiting to be in the day that you are in, Steve, right now. It's my anniversary in Australia, but not where I am right now. So how does it feel to be in the land of tomorrow?
Well, today is great, so you can expect tomorrow to be great. It's beautiful and sunny here, a little windy here in Sydney, so who knows what will come your way.
Well, something you and I have in common is that both of us live in cities that are world-renowned to be very beautiful places. Often it's Sydney and Vancouver are noted as both coastal cities and just nice climates and all of that. So I've definitely been in your town, and I'm not sure. Have you been to Vancouver before?
Yeah,
you've been here a few times. Yeah, you know what it's like.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome.
Hey, listen. Before you say anything else, Ryan, we need to celebrate your 20th wedding anniversary. That's
okay,
awesome,
let's do it.
Let's do it.
Well,
how do we do that?
Maybe. Well, I'm not sure. Are you going to sing a song like for "He's a Jolly Good Fellow," or I don't know what you're going to sing for me, but yes.
Yeah, no.
All of us
I'm not
know
going to do that.
Yes. Whether you're
Ryan, you'd have to pay extra to get me to sing you a song. You'd have to pay extra for that. No, but listen, 20 years of marriage, that's fantastic. Well done, man.
Yep. Well, shout out to my wife, Tracy. She has stood by me for all these years, and it's been quite a journey. You've actually walked through a lot of that journey with me, Steve. I'm very appreciative of you, and something kind of unique about this webinar is that most of the time when I'm interviewing people, I don't know who they are. I'm kind of getting to know them over the phone, but you are someone that, we've been able to develop a really great friendship, even though it's quite long distance. We talk quite regularly and have so many areas that we share common interests and, and kind of our life purpose around music and worship and the church and raising kids and, trying to be husbands and fathers. And you're a dad of 4 kids. I'm a dad of 4 kids and, kind of in that similar zone of life. So I just have a great admiration for you and, what you do. You're a tremendous inspiration to me, and I'm hoping that some of that can kind of leak out in the spirit of this dialogue that we're having today.
Well, thanks, man. That's really nice. Appreciate it. You're married to a great lady, and you have a great family, and I appreciate our friendship very, very much. You know that.
Yeah, I totally do. So the topic for today, just to kind of go into things a little bit, is this kind of was initiated, I think, by me because I had I know that Steve has a great background and knowledge in the world of both the church and the world of music publishing, and he's very sensitive to the kind of the dynamics that go on between those. And I've just become aware that we, as Praise Charts, reach out to a lot of people that are in the world of songwriting, and whether you're recording your own songs or recording other people's songs, or writing your own songs, or your churches are recording albums, and then you start to sell those albums, whether it's to your own congregation, and then other churches start wanting to sing your songs, and then there's the whole thing of CCLI, and how does that all work, and how do I get my song into CCLI, and do I need to, and just all these questions start to sort of pile up, all around the simple activity of just our desire to write songs. And sometimes if we find that we, are not aware of all the dynamics around it, you can find yourself getting into potentially some awkward situations, where if you're writing a song with another person and then something happens with the song and somebody else wants to record it or take it, and now you've got, you're dealing with, well, who owns it, and I didn't even know you could own a song, and all the different complexities that go. So Steve is one person that I know has kind of lived in this world, and one of the things I'm pretty aware of is that lots of people just independently come to Steve, just call him up and say, hey, Steve, we're doing this, and I've found myself in a world that I'm just totally unfamiliar with. Can you help me out? And so, Steve does this just one-off. He's kind of a mentor, coach, or helping people along as best as he can. And so that's kind of what I was thinking that we would do today, is just have an open dialogue where I have a whole bunch of questions that I'd like to go through, and some of it will be fairly basic and broad, and some might get a little bit more specific. But Steve, why don't you just give us a little background as to your own self, maybe just describe what you do at Hillsong, and a quick overview of your history. And then I'd kind of like to know just a little window into how you get approached by other churches quite often, other people in ministry or in songwriting who find themselves needing answers about questions like we're going to talk about today. So why don't you take the floor and tell us about that? Yeah.
Well, thanks, man. Firstly, let me just say thanks to everyone for joining us. I'm watching everyone jumping online here. It's really great to have you with us. This is one of those topics that I think it's really important that us creatives and songwriters in the church understand and grasp a hold of. So thank you to everyone that's made the time commitment to jump on board and have a chat about this area. I'm passionate about what I do, but my background is that I've been a part of Hillsong Church for 27 years, and I first came to this church as a songwriter and singer, and through a long story, which I'm happy to share, perhaps on a different webinar, because it is a long story. I found myself a part of our worship team, and singing and leading and being part of songwriting and producing albums. And but at the time I wasn't full-time on staff here. I was running my own business on the side, and it did create a time opening for me to be able to travel and be a part of rehearsal schedules and big weekends and so forth, as I'm sure everyone online here is familiar with. But then my wife at the time, this is kind of a funny story how I ended up here, but my wife, we fell pregnant with our first child, Aidan, and she was at the time the copyright manager at CCLI here in Australia. And we decided that she'd be a full-time mum and that she wouldn't go back to the workforce. And so at the time I was quite good friends with the managing director at CCLI here in Australia, and he approached me and said, look, would you be interested in taking your wife's job as copyright manager? And I kind of laughed at him and, said, copyright, no, I'm a musician, I don't care about copyright. And he came back to me a second and then a third time. And then, kind of after 3 times, I started to feel like he was serious. And so I really prayed about it. And I guess I came down to, what was important to me and what, what were the priorities in my life, and they were the church. I was passionate about serving the church of Jesus Christ and wanted to give my life to that. I was passionate about worship. I was passionate about inspiring worship in the church. I was passionate about worship music and music written and produced by the kingdom of God, taking its place in the world. And I started to realize that CCLI would be a really good place for me to do that. So, in consultation with our senior pastor, Brian Houston, I took that job at CCLI, and I was there for less than 18 months and got a phone call from our senior pastor who said, look, I've got an idea. I'd like you to come on staff and help Darlene Check, who was leading our worship team at the time, manage the team. At that stage, we probably had 1,000 people on our worship team in one capacity or another, either worship leaders, singers, or musicians, or dancers, or whatever they may be. And it's a lot greater than that now. But so I came on staff then to manage the worship team under Darlene. So it was my job to create a rostering and a scheduling system, and I produced all of our services, and I oversaw the training of our vocalists and our musicians. And when I came on staff, Pastor Brian said, we're going to need someone to manage the publishing division as well, because the person that was doing it up to that point had moved on. So here I was in this job where I was managing and overseeing, under Darlene's leadership, our worship team of approximately 1,000 people, and then I was managing Hillsong Publishing on the side. So I was responding to license requests, I was processing royalties, I was negotiating contracts with sub-publishers around the world, and really, other than my 18 months at CCLI, I really had no idea of copyright and music publishing. So I literally dove into the deep end and just read everything, met as many people as I could, tried to figure it out. But in the meantime, over the next few years, the publishing side grew as our songs started to go further and further around the world, and we were recording more and more songs, and so there was more and more work involved in doing the publishing side of things. And so I really needed to train other people up in the creative area to release me to be able to do some of the publishing things. And then the eldership of Hillsong Church asked me to really focus on the publishing. I think we saw that there was a need there, and a specific area, I guess, and a specific skill set that I had really honed over the years. And so I did exactly that. I trained up people. I trained up a vocal director. I trained up producers and different people to come in and take the role. And so it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago that I moved out of the creative side and the worship side and focused completely on the publishing side. And now I have a team of 7 people who help me, and licensing people and creative people who are out, exploring opportunities for songs, and I have a great team around me. So that's my history, and I guess today God has opened doors for me to participate in wider industry groups. I sit on the board of AMCOS here in Australia, which is the Mechanical Copyright Society, and so what I thought I would never get involved in has really become a huge part of my life and really my ministry. So that's my history up to this point.
That's awesome. You strike me as someone who is a guy that just jumps in, and you're willing to kind of learn on the fly, and you don't, just constantly learning and growing and expanding your palette, and taking on the opportunities that are presented in front of you, and who knows where that may even take you in the future. Your eyes are always open to the new opportunities that God's putting you in. So that's awesome. And I just want to say, it goes without saying that so many of us have such high regard for what Hillsong has done, the church has done on a world, impacting level. It's just really elevated, I think, a whole new genre of worship, particularly as I think back in the mid to late 90s. I still remember the day that I had the first worship pastor tell me that he was getting most of his worship music from Australia, and I was like, Australia? Like, what's out there? There's, kangaroos and lizards or something like that. But apparently something was...
Man, you were so uneducated back then, weren't you?
Well, now I am much more educated. And I just want to say I really look to... there was a few worship movements that were very significant for me back in the mid to late 90s, and Hillsong was definitely one of them. The whole vineyard worship movement was another one that was really, rising up, and then as you guys came and started working with integrity, and there's a lot of integrity music. It was just a whole wave of new music, and that's the world in which praise charts kind of entered into the scene, because all this new music was being written, and I was finding I was running out of, the sheet music, the charts, in order to service our band. And in particular, Steve, what I loved is that a lot of your earlier songs in particular would feature more of the brass and wind type instruments. You had that kind of Tower of Power brass section in some of those early albums, and the shots and the licks, and I just loved all of that. So that's the culture out of which praise charts grew up as you guys were doing your thing, and here we are today, still working on the same vision. So just kind of bridging us a little bit more towards our topic, because we want to talk about, I've got a whole list of questions, and I'm afraid I might not get through all of them, but one opening question I think I want to ask before we go specifically into the whole song ownership thing is Steve, I just want you to answer this. I know you have numerous people that come to you who find themselves kind of swirling in confusion and perhaps messiness, or I don't know what you would call it, around songwriting, and as a church they just started wanting to innocently write songs, and suddenly they find themselves confused as to this world around music publishing. So could you just give us a little window into what you've experienced as you've dialogued with some of the churches and worship pastors? What are some key themes that you have seen rise up, some needs that churches have in this area, just in general, and then we'll start going into some of this more specifically, trying to answer some things.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think everyone on this chat would agree and know that there's a real uprising of songs coming out of the church, the local church, worldwide. And there's churches like ours and many, many other churches around the world that have played a part, I guess, in inspiring that and almost releasing and giving permission for churches to, be creative, write songs and write the heartbeat of their own home church and their own local church. And so that's happening worldwide, and I think that's a phenomenon that's hit Christian music today. I guess 20 years ago, Christian music was defined pretty cleanly by, the artists coming out of Nashville or out of America. And whereas if you were to find Christian music, a massive part of Christian music is praise and worship, and a big part of praise and worship are church-based songs. And it is a growing phenomenon. I think it's fantastic. And if you've ever been or seen our conferences, the catchphrase and the vision behind Hillsong Conference is to champion the cause of the local church. And so we're all about applauding and championing and pushing forward the local church. And so we're all about you as a songwriter and you as a church team developing your sound and developing your message and writing songs. And there's nothing more powerful than a congregation singing together in one voice a song that's been written out of the life of the church and by one or a few of the church members, and has come out of a season of a particular nature within the church, or a teaching season, or whatever it may be. There's real unity that it brings. And so I'm seeing that all over the world, and I'm sure everybody else is as well. So along with that then comes the challenge of, okay, well, we've got these songs, what do we do with these songs, and how do we manage this songwriting process? And I guess that is why we're doing today. But there are some things that are really important to consider when you get to that point. I will say that the first thing that I talk about when I talk to churches is that are you recording because that seems to be the right thing to do, or are you recording because, one, God's calling you to it, and two, there is a need and a message that you want to put out? So I always like to challenge churches. Are you recording because you feel like that's the next step? You've got your church services seem to be going well, and songwriting. You've got a couple of songs popping up, and you might be doing a set of 4 songs on a Sunday morning, and one of them might be yours, and 3 might be others, and so now you feel like, oh, we should record an album. I think there's got to be a deeper reason to record songs from a church perspective, rather than we've got a bunch of songs, we should do an album. And so I like to challenge leadership to think that through, I guess, and to really think, okay, is an album a part of the message of our house, and is it part of what God's calling us to do? Because every church needs to know what they're called to do and what they're graced to do, which is a different thing altogether, and I guess really from the early stages of Hillsong Church, leadership, being Pastor Brian and Bobby Houston and the eldership, have felt like this was part of what God was calling Hillsong Church to do. So we set forth to do it. But it is something that, everybody needs to question. Just having a couple of songs, in my mind, isn't a good enough reason to record an album. It's a different process going into the studio, though. Taking a worship team into the studio to record songs is in itself a great practice and a great thing to do. But when you step into the world of recording albums, and I guess you've really just got to know this is something God's calling you to do. So that would be my first thing. And then, some of the things we're going to talk about. Who owns a song when you write a song? What if a worship pastor is on staff and they're engaged by the church to manage the worship team, and they're engaged to write songs? What happens to that song? And is the song purely a representation of the songwriter, or does it also represent the church and carry the vision and the mission of the church itself? And there's all these sort of questions, which I know we're going to talk about today, that often come up and need to be talked through. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly why don't we just go there? Because I've been almost salivating over wanting to ask some of these questions for years even, because, I still don't even have clear answers on some of these questions on what's the best way to approach that. So why don't we start at that first question that Natasha has put up on the screen about song ownership, just in general, so that we can sort of create a platform of understanding of what is a song. And, do people ever think of a song as a piece of property? It's like a piece of intellectual property, and a copyright, associates ownership and sort of a legal entity to that song. So maybe, Steve, if you could we're going to have to work at these fairly quickly in order to make our way through all the questions, but give us a little overview of helping us understand song ownership, and then I'll just keep moving us through from there.
Okay. Copyright law around the world is pretty much the same. There are some differences in some territories, in some countries around the world, but generally copyright law is the same. And the law says that the author or the creator of any creative work is the owner of that work, unless that creator is employed and commissioned to create that work. So if I commission someone to create a film for me and I pay them to do that, I own that film. If I commission someone or employ someone to write a song for me, I own that song. So by most laws around the world, if a church employs an individual to write songs for that church, the church, by law, own the copyright in that song. Now, copyright, some of you may know that copyright in most countries around the world exists for 70, or some countries are 50 years after the death of the author. So it is something that needs to be worked through. If you're on staff and with a church and you're employed to write songs, that church owns the song, and it owns the song for 70 years after you die. Sounds terrible, doesn't it, after you die? But after the death of the author. So that needs to be contracted through. Now, to give you an example, here in Hillsong Church, we have many guys on staff who are employed for different reasons, either that to manage the team, to train our musicians, to produce services, to arrange music for our services, whatever it may be. We don't have people on staff to write songs. Having said that, in the past we have, and the eldership of Hillsong Church have chosen to waive their ownership rights on those songs. And so Hillsong Church has a policy and a position to waive the ownership on those songs back to the songwriters. So every church and, I guess, worship pastor have to work through that reality. If you are a graphic artist and you're employed by a company to create art, that company owns that art, not you. And one thing you can't waive or you can't give away is your moral right. So that is your right to be attributed as the author or creator of a creative work. So just because you're employed by a church and the church takes that stance that they believe they own that copyright, they can't remove you as a writer, as an author. That's a right that can't be given away. And connected to that is your right to protect your professional reputation, your professional stance. So that is protected by law pretty much worldwide. And also your ability to share in any monetary gain from that artistic work. So again, these things just need to be contracted and just need to be worked through. But if you're not employed to write, then the law says you own that song. You own the copyright in that song. And I guess I'll just dive in here, Ryan, and just say that within a copyright are different rights. The right to reproduce that work. So the right to reproduce is the right to re-record, the right to print that work in print format, be it digital or physical, the right to synchronize that work. We use that phrase a lot here, synchronization, which is basically to synchronize one media with another media. So to synchronize music with film, or to synchronize media with any other media, whether it be theatre or radio or whatever it may be. And the right to perform that work is a right that is owned by the songwriter or the owner of the copyright. So the right to perform that work in public. Now, in public is defined as pretty much outside your bedroom or outside your lounge room and in a public place. So by law, a church service is considered a public place. But there are exemptions for performance within a worship setting, which I can go into and explain a bit later on. So they're the key rights. The right to reproduce the work, which is also known as the mechanical right, the right to synchronize the work, the right to perform the work, and also the right to broadcast the work, whether it be television or online. So those rights are owned by you as a songwriter. And then the question is, well, what do you do with those rights? And are there people that can help you manage those rights? Because each one of those rights have a different process of management, a different process of monetization, and that's where publishers and churches can support and get involved.
Hey, so I just want to interject here and ask a question. Yep, that's all right, and we'll keep going on that. But that was really insightful, where you were clarifying that if you're not hired by an organization to be a songwriter, then if you write a song while hired by that organization, you still, would inherently write that song. It would be kind of like if I was hired to be a plumber and I wrote, a song. The plumbing company doesn't own my song because I wasn't hired to be a plumber. And maybe it gets a little more confusing when churches hire guys to be worship pastors, and then they write songs as worship pastors. And I'm only assuming that some churches might get a little or need some clarity as to, so you wrote that song and now it's in CCLI and there's some revenue flowing on it, but, and all the kind of complexities that nobody really expected. It all just kind of happened because the song caught on. And so I guess one of the questions I am asking is, would you recommend, Steve, that most churches should have this discussion, at some level, somebody should clarify this if on an individual church basis, so there's not confusion? Because someone should just say, hey, we're hiring you to be the worship pastor, not to be a songwriter, but we understand you're going to write some songs. And,
exactly.
I don't know, if it's clarified, then it's, then there's not the confusion and problems that arise when you have a song that is really great and suddenly other churches want to start singing it. So
I can
that's
see,
where
I can see a question here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see a question here from John Bueller, if I'm saying that right.
Yep.
Definitely, there needs to be clarity around this, and if there isn't, then I would highly encourage you to go and have those conversations with the senior pastor or whoever may be that person that you would do that with, and clarify that point. If you are employed to write songs, which I've known worship pastors to be in that situation, then generally you're given time to go and write, and you're given space to go and write, and there's potentially resource around that. But I would say if you're employed by a church, you're probably scheduling musicians, you're probably programming weekend services, you're arranging songs, you're pastoring people, you're doing all these other things, and you're potentially going home and at night time sitting in your room and writing songs. And it's I would say, more than likely going to be an external thing to what you're employed to do by your church. And if that's the case, then to me it's just a conversation that just needs to be had. To me, you're not employed to write songs, you're employed to manage or pastor a worship team. Writing songs is just an outflowing of you as a person, as a creative. Obviously, when those songs become a part of the church, then there are obviously conversations that need to happen there as well. And we're going to get into that today a bit, but just clarify it. And as crazy as it sounds, having a contract is a great thing. And a contract can just be, a one-page letter that says each party, the church and the individual, agree this is the what you're employed to do, and should songs be a part of that, ownership resides with the writer or with the church, and you can go from there. When things are upfront and clean, it's so much easier. You can get on with ministry and get on with life when things are upfront, and so I would highly encourage you to do that.
That's really helpful. I think what I'm hearing you say is some of the answers that we're looking for we might not actually find in some legal document that says this is how it is and how it should be. The real answer is to just become aware and then have a conversation and bring it out in the open, and that's how you kind of can deal with it rather than appealing to some external, like there are legal boundaries, but nothing, is as good as a nice, open, clear conversation that maybe a worship pastor himself can bring to the table, get informed like we're doing, listening to this webinar and being aware of the nature of some of the issues, and then having the conversation so that it's not this hidden, unknown, thing.
Yeah.
Let me say, Petri. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
So I was going to say, I can see a question here from Petri, and she was mentioning that she writes a lot after hours. I wouldn't just rest on when you write. If the church thinks they've employed you to write songs, it doesn't matter when you write them. I do emails at night, and I'm employed by my church to. Part of my job is to do emails, and it doesn't happen 9 to 5. So I wouldn't just rest on that. It goes back to what we're just saying. Just have the conversation, make sure it's clear, and go from there. And I would hope that in the church environment there's grace and there's we're partnering here to build the body of Christ. We're not about profit. We're not about building businesses. We're actually building the church. And in the end, we're here about edifying saints and seeing people won into the kingdom of God. And let's keep the priority. And then let's have the conversations just to make sure that it's clear and there's no muddied water. So, yeah. But I wouldn't rest on the fact that you write after hours alone. We'll make sure that that's clarified. We have people on staff. This is just another example. We have people on staff here, and their 100% job is to produce music for our videos. So we do a bunch of videos, whether they be internal videos for our church congregation or videos to support tours or album releases or whatever they may be. I'm sure some of you may have seen those online. But we have several people here in Sydney and one in London that are employed to produce music. Now that music is used by Hillsong Church, but after it's been used, we often look for different opportunities where that music can be used in different films or television or where it may be. And we just have a contract that clarifies, okay, you're employed, so between the hours of X and Y, whatever that may be, any music that you create and record is owned entirely by Hillsong Church. But if you go home, in the evening and you're tinkering around with your gear and you write extra music, we have a different arrangement and a different ownership agreement, I guess, around that music. Their environment, I guess, and their arrangement is a little bit different to our worship writers because they don't do anything else. They sit in studios and write music constantly for whatever purpose that we need in our church world. So we sit down at the beginning and we clarify it, and then we have a publishing agreement around the music that defines ownership and then defines expectations on what they write and what type of exploitation we're going to create around that music and how Hillsong Church is going to use that music, and it's all clean and written, and then we just get on with getting the job done. So that's just another example outside, I guess, a little outside of a worship writer that we have here at Hillsong Church, and so it's just a matter of...
Okay, so I do have... I want to kind of press this question a little further because I'm just thinking to myself, the reality is it's not that difficult to handle maybe who owns a song, or we both wrote it together so we both own it. It's, all of that's kind of fine and dandy until, and this is like the big UNTIL, something happens, and that is a check is delivered. You get a check from CCLI or from some songwriter publisher, and the check might be for $2.58 or $20 or $200 or who knows how much it is. But as we all know, as soon as money starts flowing, now a decision has to be made. Like, what do I do with this check? Who gets it? So I know it's could be a bit of an awkward situation, but I want to kind of go there today because it's part of the reality of the world that we live in is that money does flow around. And I don't believe it means that, that Jesus should come and, whip us all and crash all our money-changing tables. Like, that's not what we're in. But there is money flowing, and I think it's okay to kind of talk about that. Something triggers, though, when, a check is delivered. So I'd like to just ask about that, Steve, and let's explore some of these questions as to, so I write a song in the church, it goes to CCLI, we record an album. Now the church has spent $20,000, putting this album together, and I'm supposed to start getting checks coming direct to me. I can only imagine how, the pot starts stirring up. So can you speak into that a little bit as to how we as churches might navigate through the world of money flow and music publishing so that it doesn't destroy us?
Yeah, I guess money does change everything. There's that phrase. I don't think we should be afraid of money. I don't think we should be afraid of our songs creating money and bringing resource back into our lives and back into the kingdom of God. So I don't think that we should be afraid of that. In the same way, but in the same breath, we're very careful how we talk about it and how we discuss it, and I think everyone should be that way. But when it comes to how we do that, it goes back to the conversation of what is the partnership between the church and the writer. And we've had this conversation many times over the nearly 30 years that we've been doing this, is what does the songwriter bring to the table, and what does the church bring to the table? And I guess one thing we may not have clarified is that we as a church have stepped into the role of a music publisher. So we have publishing agreements with our writers. Even though we said we waive ownership, we still have an agreement with our writers that gets them to license their rights back to us on a non-ownership basis, but on an exclusive basis, and allows us to administer the rights that we went through on their behalf, and therefore allows us to collect any money that's payable to their songs on their behalf. And therefore, once we collect it, we've got to distribute it onto them. And then we have to figure out, how are we going to split that money? What share of it should be retained by the church, and what share of it should go to the songwriter? And to be honest, it's a moving target. In the early days, when we set up Hillsong Publishing, we just wanted to have a central place for administration to occur. We knew that as these songs got out, someone's going to have to do the registration. Someone's going to have to do the licensing. We knew that if someone down the street, the church down the road, wanted to record one of our songs, we couldn't send it to our songwriters. We couldn't send it to Darlene or to Reuben Morgan. They're busy doing things, and we needed to have a central place to do that. And so there's the practical side of that. And then we weren't really actively promoting songs. We weren't, I guess, in a position to promote songs at that stage. And so we just saw it as an administration service to the songwriters, and therefore the share that we were retaining at that stage was a smaller share. And then I guess as the years grew, we were mindful of the fact that the platform that Hillsong Church, which is far greater than just the music, was increasing, and the exposure we were giving these songs and the exposure we were giving our songwriters was increasing. And so we just started to have that conversation, and it took years, for us to sort of come around and rediscuss that. And so that's kind of the conversation that I think everyone needs to have, is if you decide that you as a church are going to take on that role of a publisher. And the role of a publisher, just to detour a little bit here, is to promote, protect, and administer. So to promote the songs through whatever avenue is best for those songs. And obviously for us with our worship songs, our key promotion is to churches. We want these songs to be made available to churches worldwide, and we create resource. We do videos, we do training videos, we do instrument parts, we do partnerships with people like Praise Charts and more to do what we can to get these songs into the hands of music directors and worship pastors worldwide. And so that's the promotion side. To protect, it's a publisher's responsibility to protect the rights within the song and protect the integrity of the songwriter. So a publisher is supposed to be out there online looking for places where writers are being exploited in a bad way, or where reputations and professional reputations are being exploited badly, and taking down content that's illegal and that isn't remunerating songwriters appropriately. All these things is part of a publisher's responsibility. And then to administrate, so to license, to issue legal documents for the use of songs, to collect any fees or royalties payable, and then to distribute those royalties appropriately. So that's what we've decided as a church to invest into, and we did that, 20-something years ago. And some churches can do that, and some, that's a big task for you to do. And so there are people around, and companies and ministries around that can help you do that, and that can administer your songs on your behalf. I'll get into that a little bit more. I'll get back to where we were. So because of the contracts that we have in place, we receive money on behalf of our songwriters and process it and split it according to the contracts that we have and pay it forward. I tell you what, though, while we're talking money, I meet with every single songwriter that we work with at the beginning stages when we do an agreement, and then periodically throughout the time, sit them down and talk about royalties, talk about money, and make sure it's clean, that everybody understands what's happening and what's happening to the money that's coming through. But more importantly, make sure that it's not becoming a motivation. I firmly believe that if you're going to write songs for the body of Christ, it has to be because you want to inspire worship. You want to inspire the people of God to worship, and that's it. That's it. And if God chooses to bless a song and it brings resource into your life, great. But the moment that in your head and heart you say, hey, I could write some songs in my church and I could make a buck here, I feel like you are working under a wrong motivation, and dare I say, I would fear that the hand of God would not be on the ministry that you're doing. God's looking for pure hearts, and God's looking for people who want to build His church and not for personal gain. Having said that, I love it when I know that our songwriters have been blessed financially. It's just you've got to have your heart and your head in the right place, and it's a challenge for every single one of the writers that I work with. And so don't be afraid. I would encourage everyone, don't be afraid of money, but don't make it your motivation. Don't make it the reason you do this. And you know what? Successful songwriters in the world have to think this way too. They've got to have a desire greater than making money.
Right.
You've got to have a desire to reach people. We have something, the message of Christ, which is far greater than any message and any name. That's the purpose behind what we do. But you got to. It's the same everywhere with any art. If it's about making money, it's not about the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Totally good. As I'm listening to you, a question I'm having is, I'm thinking probably for 99% of the churches in the world, Hillsong, the way Hillsong in particular handles, music publishing at such a high level is not, a translatable model directly, because you guys have sort of taken it to a whole nother level, And so I guess the question I'm asking is, let's think about what do probably, 80 or 90% of the churches out there that find themselves in the world of songwriting and perhaps even recording albums, but the reality is that they're not going to become a worldwide phenomenon. And I say that, in all great respect to everybody and all of the dreams that we have. But it's just, the reality is that most of our songwriting exposure is going to be more, at a local sort of hands reach, within my own sort of network and maybe network beyond my network kind of thing. So I'm just trying to say, how do those churches handle this music publishing thing, where a church is thinking, well, I don't really want to become a music publisher or music administrator, but we still have songs to deal with, and a check is still coming in, it's arriving at the church office, and we're still wondering what to do with it, but we don't really see ourselves becoming music publishers. Can you try to speak to the general, body of churches that would fit in that sphere? I hope I'm being respectful of, everybody listening in. I'm not trying to downplay you. I'm just saying this is the reality of most of us. We're not Hillsong. So what?
Well, let me say this, Brian, and to everyone listening, we're not, in the definition that I think you're putting on Hillsong, we're not Hillsong either.
Oh, good.
We're a local church, and I guess we're a global church in that we have churches in, I think it's 12 nations around the world, and New York, LA, London, Stockholm, around the world. We still see ourselves as a local church. And you know what? Even though I refer to myself as working for Hillsong Music Publishing, I work for Hillsong Church, and we're a church well before we're a publisher. And everyone listening to my voice right now, you're a church, you're a worship pastor, and that's your job. What we're talking about today is just a part of that. And so my hope for everyone listening is that you wouldn't try to become a Hillsong church. You would just try to become the best church that you are, and try and figure out what needs to happen for you to do that. So, gosh, we've been fumbling for years, and we're still fumbling today. In trying to figure out the best way to respond to what we feel like God's calling us to do. I would hate to think that people think we've got it together, because we don't. We're still trying to figure it out day by day. What's the best way for us to do what God's called us to do as a church? A big part of that is music, obviously. So if you're a church that has songs and you feel like it's the call of God for you to record these songs, and realistically the only people that are going to buy these songs are going to be your own congregation, I still feel like there's necessity for you to have some sort of setup. I feel like it's a necessity for you to go and talk to CCLI. I feel like you need to have some sort of document between the church and the songwriter that makes things clear, and just be set up. You're in a far better place if you say, all right, this is the world God's given us right now, and it might be small in terms of the people and the number, but if you approach it like God's given us these gems of songs, which are treasures, and these go out as a heartbeat of our church and the folks and the people and the leadership of the church, they go out. I think it's highly appropriate that you take that seriously and think about, okay, what's the best way for us to manage and steward. Stewardship is a great word, the gift that God's given. And so just little things that just talk about ownership and, okay, how are we going to promote these songs, and what happens if money starts to come in, how are we going to split that, who's responsible for promoting songs, who's responsible for promoting the ministry coming out of the church. These are things we have to talk about. We have hundreds and thousands of people who are involved in our worship team, but not all of them are approved by leadership to be talking about the ministry of Hillsong and Hillsong music. And so we just make it clear as to who are the leaders, who are the voices, how we're going to promote songs, how we're going to administer songs, what happens when money starts to come in, how do we process that. And as I said before, there are people that can help you do that. And not that I'm trying to sell this, but we see this so often that we set up a service to help churches administer publishing activities, so royalty processing, registering of songs, and distribution of royalties, just because we saw a huge need. But we're not the only, company or ministry out there helping churches. There are several, and it's just a matter of Googling that and seeing who can help you do that. And there are many websites out there that can help you in terms of agreements to put together, or you could, spend the money and get a lawyer involved and so forth. But I think if you set it up from the beginning, not looking at the amount of people in your world, but more looking at how serious you're going to take this, you're in a better place no matter where God takes you. But yeah, we're just a local church trying to figure it out as well. I guess we've just been doing it for a while, and we made the decision well in the early days that we were going to do this and do it ourselves and take control, I guess, of our destiny. And we're down the track, and I guess had things in place and have had that for some time. So, yeah.
Well, I have to say, I love the quote you gave, we're not Hillsong either, because I totally set you up for that, and you brought me down to reality, and it's so great just to remind us, Steve, that, you guys still are a church, and we're all churches, even all of us, even listening in on this webinar, have that same kind of heart. And I also love how you said, basically, is if you're going to take it serious, songwriting, and make that a ministry in your church, then take this, sort of discussion serious and have the discussion and write some things out and get an agreement, beforehand. And that reflects your serious kind of calling to pursue this, world of writing songs. And so that's really great. A few more minutes we have, and we're making some, I think we're really making some great progress through some good questions here. And thank you to those of you who are listening in. Most of the questions seem to be coming in on the chat side, and we're trying to be fairly responsive to that. As I talk, Steve is able to read that, and then and vice versa. One question I wanted to talk about a little bit is the process of when you're wanting to step up to the plate to record an album as a church. And chances are a lot of churches are recording songs that they didn't actually write. You might be recording what's quote-unquote cover songs. And so could we just talk a little bit through that process from a publishing point of view, the things that you got to keep in mind, because you're dealing with intellectual property, legal entities, these songs. You can't just throw them onto an album and throw them up into iTunes and collect your 99 cents per download. It's, there are some processes that have to go through. So talk us through that fairly quickly, Steve, as to what's the basic thing you need to be thinking through. Okay?
Yeah, well, first thing that everyone needs to know is that publishers, ourselves included, love when other people do our songs. I absolutely love to hear cover versions of our songs and hear other people's interpretation of our songs. And so, if a song really resonates within your church and it's just become a part of your church, don't feel afraid to record. We've definitely recorded cover versions of songs over the years. Just with songs that have just really resonated within our congregation, and we just feel like we can't record an album because we like to feel like an album for us is a snapshot of what God's done over the past 12 months within our congregation. And if a song fits into that that's not ours, so be it. So don't be afraid of that. Having said that, you do need to go and talk to the publisher of that song. Here in Australia and in the UK, there are organisations that license that on behalf of publishers. In Australia, they're called ANCOS. In the UK, they're MCPS. And you just go to them and you tell them what.
And what about America? You can throw that in there. What about?
Yeah, in America there is. I was getting to America, but calm down, Americans. I'm coming. And in Canada, I think. SOCAN also licensed the mechanical right as well, if I'm correct. But I'll just go back to those that have societies that license that. You just go to them, you tell them the songs you want to record, you tell them the songs that you control yourself, and they'll remove those and they'll license just the songs that are third party or other groups. And you will generally tell them up front, we're going to print X amount of CDs or we're going to do a digital distribution, and they'll provide you a license and you pay the royalties up front. It's pretty clean and easy. In the US, there is an organisation called Harry Fox, Harry Fox Agency, if I'm not mistaken. They do license the mechanical right for a number of bodies, a number of publishers, I should say. Not all publishers license the mechanical right through Harry Fox, so it's not an all-in deal like some of the other territories around the world are. But it's a good starting point. You could go to them and say you want to record this song, and if they don't control that right, they will certainly be able to tell you who does, and you can go and speak to them. But often within the church world, if you know it's a Matt Redman song or it's a Bethel song, then it's pretty clear who you need to go and talk to clear that right. And then you need to be aware also that if you want to create sheet music around those songs, that's an additional license. And if you want to do a video of that song, it's an additional license as well. So every use of that song requires its own license. So you just need to be aware of that.
Yeah, I would say probably the most common license that applies specifically to the audio is called a mechanical license. So just so that we're all kind of clear, mechanical refers to the audio portion. That's not print or video or anything else, specifically mechanical. And the rate on that, just speaking in fairly broad terms, is usually about 10 cents per song per copy of that song. That's approximately what you're going to have to pay. It's actually a very specific amount, like 9.1876 whatever cents per copy per song, and then there's various rules as to how it fluctuates, but it's approximately 10 cents. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And here in Australia and in other territories of the world, it is calculated at a percentage of the sale price of the CD or the download. And so the physical rate here in Australia is 6.25%, and the digital rate is 9 cents. Again, using the US model. So it's different in every territory. It can range, especially throughout Europe, it ranges around the 8% mark. So you just need to find out what it is in your territory and figure it out. And just uploading your music via somewhere like TuneCore or something like that doesn't mean that your royalties are paid. They don't do that on your behalf, especially in North America. You still need to go and get a license to do that. So you just need to, every country is different when it comes to how they license and collect and distribute mechanical licenses and royalties. So you just need to talk to the society or to the group or just the publisher of the song you want to work, and they'll tell you where to go and what to do.
Yes. So the flip side of what we're just talking about, and Kenny was just asking this in the chat side, she says, what happens if someone wants to recreate a song I have written? What's the process? So what would you say to that?
Yeah.
If someone has a song and Hillsong wants to put it on their next album, what are you going to do?
Yep. Well, you just need to issue a mechanical license. Now, that doesn't have to be a formal agreement. It could be, or it could just be a one-page letter that says, I give permission to XYZ to record my song, title of the song, the author's name of the song, to record such a song on such and such a recording, and they agree to pay me XYZ in royalties, and then say how often they're going to pay you those royalties, and how you agree they're going to expose the song, all of the things that you would agree on just need to be in that document. If you had a publisher or the church you're aware is doing that on your behalf, they would need to issue that as well. But for us, in the early days, we just did a really simple letter that says we agree to license the mechanical right for this song to this party, and then just detail how many copies you're allowing them to print. In the early days, if we weren't in constant relationship with a particular group or church, we would ask them to pay for the royalties for a particular printout, maybe 500 or 1,000 or whatever it may be, up front. But if we were working with a particular group a lot over time and they were recording lots of songs, we would allow them to report to us on their sales, not necessarily on what they printed up front. So they would just tell us every quarter how much they sold, and we would invoice them for the royalties for that. Sometimes it's just cleaner and easier to do that up front. So you can definitely do that yourself. Again, Google that and find out some of the wording that you may need to include in that letter. But it's quite easy. You could do that yourself and just collect it yourself. But sometimes it's worth that being in a centralized place. If you're looking at it from a church perspective and you've got a bunch of songs on one record, and you may want that to be centralized. But if you're doing it yourself, you can still do that. I hope that makes sense.
Yep. So, Steve, we've come to the end of our hour, and I want to respect people's time. We've had lots of people joining us, and I've noticed quite a few songwriters. I recognize a number of names. John Bueller was one of the last guys. He just had to leave here, but he actually won our songwriting competition that we had hosted just in the last couple of months and has written, I think he's recorded 4 or 5 albums. So there's quite a few artists, songwriters, and worship leaders and worship pastors who have been very attentively listening in. So I hope this has been helpful. And just as we're kind of landing this plane with Hillsong, I want to talk about just very briefly the upcoming album. Hillsong is about to release a brand new album called No Other Name. They typically do release these annual albums around July. So we have just released one song. I got special permission from Steve himself to put this song into Praise Charts. Now, we can't actually even release the full audio. I think there might be a preview available, but I've seen this song percolating through little cell phone snapshots and, like side of the worship, auditorium kind of videos of this song, This I Believe. It's already created quite a bit of a wave as it's moved around different churches and has yet to be fully recorded. So, Steve, just tell us very briefly about, what's coming up for Hillsong in the next album and maybe just a little background onto this song, and then we'll close things down from there.
Yeah, we're really excited about this song. Just quickly, because I'm mindful of time, but the history on this song is that there was an Anglican minister here in Australia by the name of John Dixon who just is a well-known theologian in our part of the world, especially in the traditional church, who just tweeted a comment that it would be great if someone wrote a song around the Apostles' Creed. And I think he made a comment, it would be great if one of the Hillsong guys had a go at it. And Ben Fielding saw the tweet, and he's one of our songwriters, and he wrote back and said, I'll give it a go. And it was just as simple as that. And this is the song that came from that. And Ben and Matt Crocker are the 2 writers on this song. And we are super excited about it. And I think they have remained true to the Apostles' Creed. When you look at the lyrics, we spent a lot of time just making sure that everything was covered, and that it was going to be a representation of the Apostles' Creed that the Christian church worldwide, in any form, could sing. And a number of times in our services, which is something we don't do often at Hillsong Church, is we've actually read the Apostles' Creed before singing this song, and it has really brought such power to our services. And we feel like if there's any Hillsong song that's around at the moment that could really break down denominational walls and be sung in all types of churches worldwide, we feel like this is the song. So we're really, really excited about it. So I would highly encourage everyone to check it out and see if it could work in your environment, for sure.
Yeah, totally. I have been listening to this song and truly love it. I think that a lot of churches will make great use of it. Ironically, we have another song in Praise Charts, which I know you're familiar with, called We Believe. And maybe those guys saw the same tweet, because that song has just been super well received. And I know you're kind of aware that we are bringing in another song around the same, similar kind of theme, but, you know, I'm sure both songs in various congregations will find their way around, and what better thing to sing about than, you know, that fundamental truth that binds us in evangelical Christian faith together. These are the things that are like unchanging. You know, there are some things that you can be like, well, you know, you can wear hats and have long hair, and we'll have short hair and no hats, or whatever, you know, we decide. Those are not the fundamentals, but these are the core facets of the faith, and this song is going to carry it all. So that's awesome.
I'm very aware of the song. We believe we love the Newsboys guys, and it is a great song. And to be honest, we didn't hear it or were aware of it until well after this song was done and completed, and we were well into our process. But so the two songs really were created and existed separate. I know it's not a Newsboys song. I think it's an Integrity Riders from memory. Is that right, Ryan?
Yes.
You probably know that.
Yeah. Yes. That's right.
It's a great song. So, you know, bless them in what they're doing. We're certainly not trying to compete with them. Our two songs that just come to life at the same time, I guess. And but we're really excited about this song, and hope other people latch onto it as well.
Yeah, and behind that song, I think you have another 12 or so. Most of them are brand new for the church, and they'll be coming out in what, like maybe a week or two. We are going to have them all fully.
July 1.
Yeah. So everyone, we have had the songs in our, with our arrangers for the last 6 weeks or so, and Dan Galbraith has been orchestrating the entire album. Lead sheets, piano vocals, and choir parts, and full orchestration. The whole thing is going to be available when the song goes, or when the album goes live. So that's been a great cooperation with you guys, and there are a number of, as there always are when the Hillsong album comes out. You can bet there's going to be some songs in there that are viable for your churches. So stay tuned for that. And of course, the Hillsong Conference, that's a big thing that goes on every year at Hillsong. I'm sure that Sydney is buzzing right now with preparation for that. How many people will be coming together for that conference in Steve?
Yeah, we're expecting 25 to 30,000 people here in Sydney for our Hillsong Conference. It's the largest conference of any kind here in Australia. So we're excited that the Church of Jesus Christ is making a statement to our nation and to the world, I guess, with this conference. If you've never made the trip down, guys, I would highly encourage you to do that sometime. I know it's a bit of a jump from North America, but come down. It's winter time here, but we do winter pretty well down here. It's nice and sunny and warm during the days. But our conference is really, really great. We're really excited about it this year. We've got the guys from Bethel, and we've got Matt Redman, and so many great people with us this year. But as in every year, we release an album. So the album will be released on the 1st of July worldwide, and we coincide that with the conference as well. And we're just really excited about the concept of no other name. The name of Jesus is higher than any cultural group or any denominational group or anything else that's going on in our society, and it is what combines us and unites us as the body of Christ is the name of Jesus, and that's what we're about. That's what these songs say. That's what our conference is about. We know we're a unique church in the style that we are, but we are about the church, no matter what it looks like or sounds like or feels like, and so that's the concept behind this album. And if you look at the artwork, which I see coming up on the feed here, we literally did take over Times Square and took over every screen in Times Square for an hour on a particular day. and just posted no other name and the name of Jesus over every screen on Times Square, and that's kind of our message this year, is that there is no other name it's higher than any name or any culture or any brand that is around today.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait for that to come out. So, Steve, this has been great. We have gone a little bit over time, but I think that's because I bit off a bigger bite than I knew we could chew inside 1 hour. It's been a big topic to take on. And
I'm seeing some pressure for a part two, Ryan. So maybe we can do that for you guys if you get into.
I'm sure that we can. Yeah, that would be great. Maybe we could get into some more detail on, and if any of you who are listening in, if you feel like, oh, I wish they would have gone deeper on a particular topic, or we didn't get to a certain question, give us your feedback, and maybe we can put together the content for part two. So I'd be happy to host that with you, Steve. It's a great topic, and I hope you all feel encouraged. Really, our desire is to encourage you as songwriters and churches, because it is something special and unique as a church when you're singing a song that comes from the life and has been birthed from your own congregation. It's something unique and special, and I hope that you can have that opportunity to express that, and then hopefully bless some other churches with those same songs. So that would be awesome. Good, Steve. Well, I'll let you go into the rest of your day. Thanks for taking some time with us on a beautiful Wednesday morning that it is for you, and it is Tuesday afternoon at the end of our work day. Most people in North America are about winding it up, so blessings to all of you, and I'm going to have a holiday tomorrow because, as we said in the beginning, tomorrow's my 20th wedding anniversary, so Tracy and I are going to pack up and head out to Whistler, British Columbia, which was the home of the 2010 Winter Olympics. If any of you watched that, it's a beautiful place 2 hours up from where we live. I look forward to that time together. So great to serve you all. Thanks, Steve. I'm sure we'll be in touch lots. And
great. Thanks for being with us, everyone.
All right.
Ryan.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
God bless.
Bless you. So just hanging on just a little at the end. We had a great group of people. Thank you for being so responsive with your questions and interaction. The chat kind of just kept going, and I'm actually finding that to be, I don't know, it's a good way to go. It feels like it's very live and interactive with all of you. Thanks, Chris, for your comments. Chris is a good friend. We've shared a few meals together. And Jason and Robbie, and there's Steve McPherson. Joel, thank you very much, guys. It's a real privilege to be able to do this. Of course, it's so easy to do a webinar with a guy that's truly your friend, because you can just feel more relaxed, and it's like two guys talking on the phone and, a couple hundred people listening in. So there you go. You guys have been great guests, and we'll look forward to serving you more. Okay, so I'm going to sign off here, and there will be an archive of this. It'll probably be live online by tomorrow. Just go to praisestars.com/Hillsong webinar, and we'll have it at that link. You're welcome to share that link with whoever you want. It's totally free, and hopefully that's a good way to serve you all. All right, this is Ryan Dahl signing off for another great webinar. Talk to you all later.